Okay, the expedition for us started back in March of 2018. Actually, before that, I was assigned about 2 years prior to that point, and Ricky was assigned within a year of the mission. We spent 50% of our time traveling and working in Russia in preparation for the flight, mainly for this launch on the Soyuz spacecraft. And this is the shot of us walking out, getting ready to meet the commission in preparation for climbing on the spacecraft on March 21st, 2018. It was an exciting time for all of us. I can tell you that all of us are space veterans. This is not our first time on a rocket, but it was the first time for Ricky and I to ride on a Soyuz. And it was an exciting time for us to be there in front of the lights and getting ready to go and launch into space. And if there's anything that I can tell you about the difference between a Soyuz and a shuttle ride is that this one, I could hardly tell we launched off the pad, whereas with the space shuttle it was like, so this was quite a treat for us. It was nice and smooth. You can see we're really not rocking and rolling much in our seats. We're just waiting for staging to occur. And 8 minutes later, get us into orbit over 100 miles into space. We had a nominal ascent, and we were all smiling on the way uphill and hooting and hollering and having a good time, and really looking forward to the arrival to the International Space Station. Our rendezvous was originally planned for as short as 2 orbits or just a few hours to get to space, but we ended up resorting to a 2-day docking profile where we spent roughly 2 days sort of in between sleeping and waking, really not knowing what time or day it is, but eventually arriving to the International Space Station. It was quite an amazing sight to see as we approached the space station that's had humans living on it since the year 2000, and over 11 years was slowly built in space, piece by piece. And what's most remarkable about the space station is that very few, if any, of the components were actually attached together before they got to space and were put together. And so it's quite a feat of engineering to see it on orbit. We joined up in this small little city in space where we had 3 crew members waiting for us to join the team and get working. We were greeted on orbit by Anton Skaparov, our Russian crewmate, in addition to Norshigi Kanai and Scott Tingle, the American crew member. And we were ready to go. Again, we spent 2 days in orbit acclimating to the environment of space. And so once we got on board, I think we were really ready to get busy and start being productive and helping out the crew that was waiting for us. Our first order of business when we got to space was a quick safety brief, and you can see we're all smiles here. Safety brief, so we knew what to do in case of any immediate emergencies, but that was followed by a family conference with our family and friends back in Russia who had watched the launch. It was really nice to be able to speak to our family and friends. You can see everybody's happy here. We all felt great arriving at the space station, and our first order of business was to have this conference with our family and friends, and also to start thinking about the work that we had ahead of us. And we arrived at the space station on March 23rd for our first EVA on, I believe it was March 29th. So just 6 days later, we started preparing for our time to go outside and get to work. This was a little bit unusual for a space station crew to show up and do a spacewalk within about 6 days or within a week of being there, but not totally unusual for Ricky and I, both having space shuttle flight experience. This is the norm. The way we used to fly, we'd launch into space on the shuttle and get busy with EVAs right away. But Ricky and I were fortunate to do 3 spacewalks during the mission. The first on that day on March 29th, and then again in the middle of May and mid-June. So 3 spacewalks altogether. We spent time we swapped out a lot of cameras on the space station, some high-def cameras associated with the development of the new commercial crew program to allow them to dock, join up with the space station and bring new crews to space, and laid out some wireless cameras as well, and did some pump flow control assembly.
Bus station, we have traffic coming and going all the time. It's really gotten impressive. Our capability has really improved, I think, to the point where we can pretty much get what we need at the space station in a very timely fashion when we need it. And that's quite an accomplishment for our international partners as well as our corporate partners. When traffic arrives, it's bringing thousands of pounds of equipment, science experiments, and supplies. We get busy unloading it. We also try to take advantage of some of the magnificent views that the space station provides to us when we have the privilege to look out the window. Going down the coast of Italy, right over the spine of Italy. You see the sun playing near the Nile. The interplay of light on the space station is something to behold. The cities, the thunderstorms, the reflections, the aurora, and I really love this image. Just the aurora, the city lights, and this kind of the inner dawn. Just quite magnificent. Drew's telling me in Chicago and Detroit. One of the wonderful additions we've had is 8K capability for video, so super high definition video. I'm sorry that I'm the subject matter of it, but we also got some great imagery next to Alex, really kind of getting that going and helping us out with it. This is some Arabidopsis, a simple plant we use for genetic studies. We also, after installing several new high definition cameras, had some great imagery of the typhoons and hurricanes of a very active hurricane season during our stay. I think some of the images Alex captured of the eye were front page news. Some more 8K video of some of the maintenance and science work we did. Just kind of part and parcel of the day. Every day is different and every hour is slightly different. You scientist 1 minute and an hour and a half later you're repairing something. Just fantastic imagery to share with folks back on Earth. Here's Drew climbing around. What are you doing here? Don't remember. And I get some fantastic imagery I'm going to pass off to Serena.
So this is one of our favorite pastimes, and here, of course, more science. This is looking at sedimentation and how those forces are altered in microgravity and how that differs from on Earth. Here we're actually, we are science experiments ourselves, and so we're getting our own blood drawn here, and this is blood that actually returned down to Earth that day and returned home with Drew and Ricky on their Soyuz. But we do this quite a bit during the mission, drawing our blood, urine, you name it. We are as much guinea pigs up there as everything else. Just another beautiful view of HTV out the cupola window. This is, again, probably where we spent most of our time. And here, you see Alex installing the new life support rack, and he's got a special way to view procedures that he's got mounted on his wrist here. This is very complicated, but it went really, really well. And back in the Japanese module, here we see Drew working on the airlock slide table. This is how we launched all of our CubeSats. Lots of different experimentation. This is Spheres, one of our oldest standing experiments on station. Tether slosh, things like passive cargo ships. This is what this experiment translates to, and you'll see a real nice video of Ricky doing that later. DNA and RNA sequencing capability. This is something we did on station the entire time. Ricky started it out, and it is really amazing to be able to think that we could swab a surface and determine what microbe is growing on that surface right up there using those tiny little instruments. So once Ricky left, I continued that work with the sequencing. Here you see just all the different science we have. The bottom right, that's AngieX, where we did studies on cancer therapy, cancer research. Here's again another time lapse of, actually I think he moves that fast in real life, I'm not sure, of Ricky doing spheres. And of course, there's always time to have fun.
Actually, they went back in their Soyuz getting ready to get home after spending 4 months on station with us. And yeah, I mean, you can see in the last minutes, that's how quickly the time also feels on orbit when 4 months pass. And then all of a sudden, half your friends, they just disappear. At the beginning, it's a little bit like the first time when you're a youngster and your parents are out of the house, you feel like, okay, now the place is ours, and you float around and you enjoy having the space, but also you're missing your friends, of course. Usually that's not too bad because new friends are coming up soon. Like 7 days later, we were expecting actually the launch of Nick and Alexei, which unfortunately didn't happen. Here you see the landing of the last Soyuz crew, Ricky, Drew, and Oleg, and you can see why they call it the soft landing engines. And you can see people are looking, is there still someone in there? And you know, the status of these guys, when they drag them out, people actually really say it's a little bit like getting bored all of a sudden. I mean, it's amazing what the gravity does to your body. If you're used to 6 months of no gravity at all, and then you go through like 5 Gs on re-entry, and then they drag you out there. It's not easy on those guys. And we were actually watching from the space station, looking down on them and making sure that they were all safe down on the ground, and only then we would go to bed. Meanwhile, up on station, we enjoyed our time, the three of us. We didn't know yet that the new crew wouldn't be making it to the space station. Here we are harvesting some of our plants. I'm here working on protein crystals for and having some fun on Halloween. And then at some stage, it dawned on us that the new crew wouldn't be coming for quite a while, actually. And so that was quite a bit of a shift in our sort of expectations of the expeditions. We still focused here on science a lot and worked through until the moment of the new crew arriving. That was just 2 months before we were actually, 2 weeks before we were actually meant to hand over all the ISS and the culture and all the equipment basically to these folks in 2 weeks, and that was quite a challenging time. Not only that, we handed inside operations off, but also my colleagues Sergei and Oleg Kononenko, they were preparing for an EVA outside to basically cut up our spaceship to find out what caused the leak in it. So that was a very, very busy time, and I really have to say kudos to these guys in the back there, David and Anne. They were drinking from a fire hose, but really preparing really well to take over station. You can see here folks floating. That's how it looks like, not exactly when you arrive new, but you have to spend a little bit of time until you float like that. Those are, I think that's Sergei here on the Strela arm preparing to move over to our spaceship. That was an exciting spacewalk. We were glad at the end when we had those guys back in. And then it was pretty much time for us to leave 2 weeks later. It was the 20th of December, just before Christmas. We're sitting in our space. The atmosphere is a few thousand degrees around us, then -10 or so. Our landing was behind clouds, so all we have is a parachute on the ground here. But we were, and you can see that, really, really happy to get back to the ground and to see, talk to our families here, and just smelling that earth despite the snow. It's just an amazing thing that I think that every astronaut remembers when they come back from space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's the guy.
Yeah. And also up north too, but yeah.